Welcome to Unfiltered. I'm here with Smoke Dixon, a former GM at the University of Maryland, director of scouting at Vanderbilt, and a 7-year scout in the National Football League.
Now I'm here with Carl Reed, former state-winning head coach. Carl, let's get to it.
Smoke and I will touch on the latest headlines and tell you what's really going on in college football. In today's episode, we will discuss Billy Napier stands on business. Greg Sankey welcomes national standards in the college football program with the best secondary. Who has the best secondary this year, Smoke, going into college football season? We'll touch on that. Who is the best player to ever play in the SEC? I can't believe where we're going with that conversation. Peyton Houston, high school phenom. We'll see him later on in the show. Our flag on the play section, and then we'll end with viewer questions. Smoke, let's get right into it. Where you want to start today?
Well, Carl, you know where I want to start. Like it or swipe it. Like it or swipe is our first segment we're going to jump into. If we like it, we're going to just talk to it, discuss it, just touch on the quickest topics in our sports history going on right now in terms of news. If we swipe it, Carl, we're just going to touch it quickly and just keep on pushing. Let's jump right into it. This is one I really want to get into. Listen, let's get into Florida. Florida Gator head coach Billy Napier last week got into it. Former Florida recruit Jaden Rashada filed a lawsuit against Florida Gators head coach Billy Napier and his collective over a botched $13.5 million NIL deal. The complainant alleged Napier and others fraudulently induced Rashada to attend Florida with no intention of following through with their financial promises. While the reporters, it was at the SEC on Tuesday, Napier touched on this for the first time, and he said this: "I can't comment on the litigations," Napier said at the SEC meetings in Destin on Tuesday, "but I do have confidence in our legal team. I am comfortable with my actions, and I'm thankful for the university's support. We will leave it and let the process take its course." Carl, I'm going to go ahead and swipe this one right here, because I don't think this is more newsworthy than it was last week. There's no true legs to this. The NCAA didn't jump into it and say anything. Billy Napier did not seem like he's in a panic. He just gave you the quote of every person that's been in a legal situation. "I'm going to pass it off to my legal team, let them handle it." So if he's passing it on to his legal team and letting them handle it, and he's just getting out in front of it and being able to touch on it, I'm not going to touch on it too much longer. I'm going to swipe this on to you. Where you at with this?
It was a little long there, Smoke, for a swipe, but I'm going to let it ride. I'm going to like this one. I think it's good that Billy Napier stood up and said something. A lot of times in situations like this, coaches go dark, they go quiet, they don't speak on it rather. I think that it's really, really tough when you talk about somebody's intentions. I think the hardest part for Jaden Rashada and his camp is going to be to prove intentions. We never know what anybody's intentions are, but I am glad that coach spoke on it and that he commented on this deal, Smoke.
Well, Carl, let me get on to it a little bit more with you. Since you said I swiped it real fast or I didn't like it, we're going to get into it. So if he's found guilty, how would this affect his reputation moving forward?
Well, if he's found guilty, I mean, you know what's going to happen from there. It's going to become a issue that probably costs him his job if he goes down as guilty in a situation like this. But what happened or how you feel is very hard to prove in court. I think that it's some truth to what Rashad is saying, but I think it's really hard to get in front of a judge and prove all of those allegations.
Now, with all that said, we know what it comes down to. The bottom line: how does this impact recruiting, knowing that we're getting to our first week of official visit where kids are on campus?
I don't think that it affects recruiting at all, Smoke. I think kids care about their own situations. Whether you're dealing with a kid, the parent, the high school coach, everybody's going to look at the other person's situation and say, "I want my money. I want to play in the SEC. I want to play on the big stage." That's his problem. That's not my problem.
So, Carl, you liked it. Let's get on to the next topic.
Greg Sankey welcomes national standards in college sports. Smoke, since we're discussing the SEC, let's go into the SEC meetings. Greg Sankey said this on the future of SEC football: a national system that deserves national standards. I think Congress still has an opportunity to use the structure of the settlement to enact legislation to strengthen the future of college sports. Smoke, what are your thoughts here? Do you like this or do you swipe it?
Carl, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and like this just so I can just touch on it and give you my point of view. We all know when most head coaches, general managers, ADs get in front of the microphone or get in front of the podium to discuss something that's been going on in their situation. A lot of it's a bunch of nothing that we already know. I don't think this is moving the needle much for me or to anybody that's reading through this. If you read through it, all he keeps saying is he wants it to get to a standard. What is the standard? What is the format that we're looking at? Well, he wants it to go to Congress and for Congress to now implement a standard for what we're going to move on to in terms of college football. How does this affect football, college football? It's going to affect it in uniformity. It's going to make sure that the rich stays richer and everybody else is below that Mendoza line. And if we continue, like we said a long time ago, and we've been forecasting this a little bit too now, Carl. We've said, if you want football to become a business, keep this format. But if you want it to stay the way that it is, the truest and the most purest form of athletics that we enjoy, when you fill up 100-something thousand people in a stadium, Carl, and it's in these little small cities and small towns, you know it's nothing but pure love and joy. Now, when you bring lawyers, Congress, legislations to it, not much enough, boring, can't stand it anymore. So I like it, but it ain't saying much about anything. I'm waiting until he gets to this real answer. Your thoughts?
I'm going to swipe this, Smoke. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but one thing that I would like everybody to consider, and this hasn't come up yet, as players begin to possibly collective bargain, we start talking about salary caps, we're having all these conversations about money. Smoke, what happens when the players start saying, now that I'm an employee, amateurism is over and I have a job, I don't want to take 12 hours a semester anymore. I have a real job. I only need to take 6 hours. That's a conversation that I think that we're going to have down the line because of these issues.
Carl, when these cats understand that they're in such a good place financially, athletically, and everything is around their true performance, they'll really understand they should have just left this alone and just keep eating exactly what you've been eating. But let's go on to the next topic because I really, really like this one. This one touches my heart a little bit. Let's get straight to it. Now we're talking about the best secondary in the country. You got Iowa, Oregon, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Carl, you know where I'm going with this one right here. I'm loving this, but I'm going to like this a little bit more for the simple fact this is my secondary. And I think this secondary right here, Carl, has a shot of being one of the best secondary, not of modern day, of all time. And that's Ohio State. Carl, they led the nation in passing yards in terms of giving up yards, their ability to get the ball back. They have the ability to go nickel, dime, penny. When I say nickel, 5 DBs on the field, dime, 6, penny with 7. You got young cats like Denzel Burke, NFL player. You got Lorenzo Styles, NFL player. Jermaine Matthews, NFL player. And I believe the best safety in the Nick Saban era, Caleb Downs. Now they're going to be able to put locks on guys when they come up in that horseshoe and make sure that they don't come out. And if you want to pass the ball against this no-flight secondary of NFL players and being coached so well, I know that Bama said they're at DBU, LSU said they're at DBU. Ohio State has great reasons to believe that done in the past few years can be DBU as well. Peyton, my man, what's up? Carl, your thoughts and where we're at with
it. Man, I'm gonna tell you, Smoke. You always make good points, and then you go a little too far, right? Caleb Downs, the best ever from the Nick Saban era. We'll talk about that later. All right. I'm gonna go here though with the best secondary in the country, the University of Michigan. They were led by their secondary a year ago with a lot of pros in it. Veterans return, guys like Will Johnson, who will be a top 10 pick at corner in the next draft. You have safety Makari Page returning, and a young guy named Jair Hill, who has NFL talent that everybody in Ann Arbor is extremely excited about. So I'm going to go here with the University of Michigan for the best secondary in the country.
So again, we're at it, and it's what is you want to make this rivalry really a rivalry, or you don't even want to look at the fact that I just gave you up to 7 guys. And Bryce West, I didn't even mention that. The pup that's coming in, I didn't even mention that, Carl. They rolling over there. If one of your guys go down, I hope never happens, injury or they get ran out of gas, somebody blow the lid off of them. You got enough back there in the secondary, like in terms of depth? And do you have 2 guys up front that can get after him like JT and Corey Sawyer? But hey, listen.
You're moving the goalposts. We're not talking about the D-line. We're talking secondary play right now.
But, Carl, what makes a good secondary?
Pass rush.
You got 2 guys up front too, but I got 2 edge guys. But I'm gonna let this one go, and we can reconnect and revisit this at another time. Keep it pushing, my man.
Guys, for more information on recruiting and scouting, don't forget to tune to our 24/7 live show every Thursday at 5 p.m. where we will discuss the latest in EA Sports College Football 25. We will preview the Texas Longhorns, and we will discuss Bronny James. Does he have what it takes to make it? Smoke, we just got through talking Michigan and Ohio State, and I love talking about the Big Ten. You want to know why I love talking about the Big Ten? Because
tell me.
They got their fans are a little more classy and dignified. They're not as outrageous as some of you guys that come from the SEC. We were at my house, you and I were at my house on Memorial Day at the barbecue, having a conversation, and then you said something that I'm sure some of our viewers are going to think is completely outrageous. You said that Cam Newton is the best player in the history of the SEC.
Well, listen, Mama Reed threw down with them greens, but the greens wasn't the reason why I came up with this. I've been saying this for a long time. Flat out, bar none, it ain't heads over shoulders that he's the greatest, but he is the best player to ever step foot in the SEC. And here's why, Carl. When you look at that national championship team, it was Cam on offense, Nick Fairley on defense. This was the worst roster ever constructed in terms of national championships. And all Cam did was run through the SEC like hot knife going through butter. Now you're gonna say, well, Smoke, he didn't have anybody else around him. It was him on offense. He had 2,800 yards in terms of passing, 1,400 yards rushing, 50 combined touchdowns. And don't forget, those teams that he beat in the SEC, that Bama team when he was down 24-0, came back and won it, that was him by himself. So at the end of the day, I would love to hear you tell me what other player in the SEC history did what he did in terms of taking every single award that year. Maxwell, Davey O'Brien, AP, and remember the Heisman now. That was a landslide. And the guy that he bust up for that win, Andrew Luck. So you looked at me crazy like everybody else walked out of that room. But I just want to know what other player in our era dominated the best conference statistically and came home with the rings and things unscathed. And when he left, Carl, you know what happened to his coach? His coach got fired in a couple of years too.
Well, Smoke, let's talk about this, because when I started talking about this in group chats and obviously the people who were at the house Monday, Tim Tebow, Danny Warfel, Johnny Football, Herschel Walker, Reggie White, Peyton Manning, and Cam is the best ever. You standing on that. That's what you're sticking with. How do you put him over those guys I just named?
Okay, let's start off with your first guy, and I'm going to break him down. Give me your first name that you just said.
Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow statistically put up some solid numbers, too. He was 1,000-yard rusher, and he threw for 2,000 yards, too. But a lot of them yards were shovel passes to a guy named Percy Harvin. You had the Pouncies. You had Ern Hernandez. He had a bunch of good players around him. And that defense, you don't want to touch that defense either. If you look at that roster that Urban Meyer and Florida put together, started with Mike Loxley and Ron Zook, that was probably one of the better rosters next to the University of Miami team that won in 01. Give me your next name and I'll bust that one up too. Keep going.
Let's go Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning didn't win a national championship, didn't win a Heisman. Don't want to talk about him. Keep going.
Danny Warfel.
Danny Warfel. Solid player. But did he do it by himself like Cam? Had players on defense, had those two Ike Hilliard and Riddell Anthony on offense, and you know how I feel about my man Fred T. He had really good players. Give me another name.
Herschel Walker.
You saw him run around and do well, but we're talking about the running back position. The running back position does not have full hands on a team like the quarterback does. And to me, when you're talking about the greatest or the best of all time, you got to be able to control the game in different facets. He controlled it in the air, on the ground, and if they were behind, I saw what he did. My wife almost had a baby when he came back and beat Bama. Cam Newton. Keep going.
Johnny Football.
Come on now. Johnny Football didn't even win a national championship. So we can't talk about being the greatest if you didn't bring home the ring. My opinion.
All those championships that your school, the University of Alabama won, there's not one Crimson Tide player that was better in the SEC than Cam Newton.
It hurts my heart. Oh, you know it. It hurts my heart to even speak of that school. But I have to give credit where credit is due. Derek Thomas was probably the best player in Alabama history on defense. I think Tua Tagovailoa has something to say about it on offense. But all five of Tua's receivers, again, all first rounders in the pros. It was Cam by himself on offense, and Nick held it down on defense. I have never seen another man capture the NCAA in the best conference in football like Cam Newton did and win it all by himself on offense and carry that team to a national championship. Just my opinion. Hit me up in the chats if you want to. But somebody going to have to do a better job of presenting somebody else that tore up the NCAA like he did. That's just me, Carl.
We got a couple people that have asked this question. What about Bo Jackson?
What about Bo? Bo's a great player, but Bo had players around him. And again, when we talk about Bo and all those other guys, Carl, I don't know if they played against a talent like Cam did in the SEC. Like that Bama team that he beat, loaded. That South Carolina team that he beat, loaded. That Patrick Peterson led team with all those good players on there, loaded. And he made it look easy. He also went out there in Oregon and put it on them boys too. So, again, we can say Bo, we can say Herschel, we can say a lot of names. But when you give me a solo act that captures the crowd and runs the arena and does it with such a gracious smile, we can not like the person, but the player, he was a problem, period.
I like how you threw that Oregon in there. You know you boys love to take a shot at Chip Kelly every time you get the opportunity to. You and Shady and all you guys, man. You guys love to do that.
Chip away, Carl. Chip away.
So,
Chip
Smoke,
away.
I was in one of my group chats the other night since we're talking about quarterbacks, and I got a text message that circulated about this young quarterback out of Shreveport, Louisiana, who had just signed a big NIL deal. And so when I read it, I got on the phone and I called my people down at the bottom of the map in Louisiana, and they say, Reed, this kid has a chance. He has the goods. He has what it takes at a major program, Evangel Christian, which is known for producing big-time quarterbacks, guys like Josh Booty, John David Booty, Brock Berlin, some of the best quarterbacks in the country. We're going to welcome in our show Mr. Peyton Houston and his father, Sean. Guys, welcome.
Nice to be on, guys.
Man, great to have y'all. Let's do it.
Yes, sir.
Cam Newton definitely made his presence felt as a quarterback on and off the field, Peyton. You know, and despite the fact that you haven't started a high school game yet, you're making national headlines and signed a major NIL deal from Evangel. And so we want to make sure that we welcome you on our show You have big time potential. Everybody's talking about you. Being a trailblazer comes with a lot of responsibilities. What are you doing to ensure that you're setting the stage for the next Peyton Houston?
Just each and every day, I try to give God all glory. Without him, I wouldn't be in this situation. And after that, I just keep my head down, grind, so I can help those after me get to where they need to get.
Man, we all understand that humbleness is an art. How are you staying humble and not allowing complacency to set in as you make your mark to the next level?
Just knowing I want to get to the highest level, I got to work to that. And I got other kids around the country that want to be in this position and will work every day for it. So I can't get complacent and let them catch up to me. So I just got to work every day.
Peyton, who are the 3 quarterbacks that you study and try to pattern your game after?
I say Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, and C.J. Stroud.
Peyton, those are really, really good names. But what part of your game would you say is Aaron Rodgers like? And what part would you say is C.J. Stroud-esque?
I say the part of my game that's Aaron Rodgers is how I throw, my mechanics. The C.J. Stroud part is the mindset. And Pat Mahomes is how I just go out there and just feel and flow.
Now, I'm a parent. I got 3 kids. I've been through the process like you're going through. Pops, how have you helped them and guided them through this journey? And what advice would you give for other parents that are out there?
Yes, sir. You actually that journey is a great word to use. Just making sure. I would say parents just make sure you guys understand that this is a journey. You can't eat a steak with one bite. It's a little bit at a time. But you have to consistently do it. It truly is it's a mindset and it's a lifestyle. We work every day. We want to get 1% better every day, and that's our focus. Take no credit for the success. Give all glory to God. And in failure, thank God for the opportunity and ask God for the lessons in whatever failure. But it's just a focus. It's a mindset, and it's a daily journey. So that if you're able to do that, then I believe that everything else is a byproduct of that level of mindset and hard work.
Well said.
Greatly said. Social media and recruiting sites, they can create unrealistic expectations. How are you, Peyton, blocking out the noise and staying focused on being a great football player?
Honestly, I try not to look at it. I just got to keep the goal that I want in mind to get where I want to be, the main goal, and not what others and trying to satisfy others. I try to work every day to get where I want to be.
Pops, you gave a great message. Now, Carl is a former head coach. I'm a former assistant coach. But it sounds like you got some coaching in you. So we did some research, and I understood that, hey, you're one of those big-time youth coaches. You have any big-time name guys that you've coached?
So I would say the one that everyone would probably that's the most recognizable is Devin White. He was blessed and fortunate enough to get drafted in the first round. He was a number 5 pick overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I know, as you guys know, he's now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Super blessed and super fortunate that God aligned our paths to cross when we did. Was able to coach him from the time he was 10 years old all the way through high school. So had an opportunity to actually go through the recruiting process with him and go through the everyday the day-to-day grind of the recruiting process, and then see him get to to the highest in terms of his ranking, and going to LSU, winning the Buckus Award, and now working to be one of the best linebackers, the best. I'm sorry, Devin, my fault, brother. The best linebacker in the NFL. That's the goal.
Man, come correct. You better put that the best.
I'll get a phone call.
Dad, when I see great players, a lot of times I see their father guiding the way. Where did you start at in this process with Peyton, and what made you know that football was going to be his game?
Man, that's a great question. So Peyton was really, really fortunate in that I'm going to say Peyton was really born into the game. Obviously being the son of a coach, football has just always been it's just always been what we did. He grew up in the country, so there just wasn't a lot of things to get into. All of my players, our house was basically it was the community house. It was where all of the players gathered. They played in the front yard. And on days where they didn't have anything to do, they would come by the house and ask if they could go to the stadium and get work in. And Peyton he was fortunate to be able to be a part of that and see all of that. So for him, that's just life. And so people always ask all the time, man, well, what do you have to push him? Do you have to push him? And what part of this do you play? And I tell everybody, no, football is just always been just a part of it's just always been a part of life. It's just what we do. We are true lifers. That's the best word I can use to describe it, man. We are for real lifers.
Sounds like football is in your blood all the way through and through. But listen, the last question I have for you, Peyton. When it's all said and done and you finish up your high school career, what do you want the world to know what Peyton's done in high school?
That's a great question. I haven't really thought of it, but I try to work to be the best player I can be every day. So one thing I say I want the world to know is that every time I step on the field, that I give God all glory, one, and just best player out there. Yeah.
Peyton, before we get out of here, as Smoke said, I used to be a high school coach. I always loved sitting down with young men and their parents. I'm gonna just give you a couple words before we move on. Remember, as you go through this journey, to stay locked in on the main thing. The main thing being you being a great person, number one, a great teammate, number two, being a great leader, focusing on being a great football player. As you continue to grow and you get offer after offer, you're getting recruited by school after school, to the point where the fan bases are harassing you, to the point you want to be on social media. Lean on your father, because he's already given you a great foundation. And as the money becomes in quicker and quicker for players these days, people are going to try to separate you from your main source of decision makers, which is your father. They're going to put divides in there for you. They're going to try to put traps in the road. Don't let that happen. The second thing I want to tell you, make tremendous decisions. Specialize in making good decisions. Making good decisions is a skill that, when exercised, leads to elite success. So make sure you make great decisions. Always be very coachable in every situation, and let your teammates enjoy your success. Sometimes great players need to always know how much of their success also belongs to the team. You on a great ride right now. You've got great momentum going in. We're excited to have you on our show today. We wish you nothing but the best. And Smoke, at some point, we got to get down there and see him live, don't we? We got to go see if he's going to get busy when we pull up in the stadium, don't we, Smoke?
Absolutely. So when we pull up, how many touchdowns you going to throw up?
About 4.
Ooh, all in the air. You're going to do something on the ground for me, because I've watched your film already. You got the ability to dual threat this thing and to make plays off script.
And just remember, man, there's nothing like Friday night high school football. It's really the last time that you're going to be able to do it before the real business kicks in. You had a great program with legendary guys in the past, man. Enjoy yourself and keep working.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank y'all.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Smoke, man, when you think about players, NIL, guys getting younger and younger, signing NIL deals, now you were a major recruit. You went to the University of Alabama. You got recruited by everybody in the country. Now, some people will say NIL was going on back then. If people who are watching our show, they see that your lights are even brighter than my lights. You got SEC lights. I got FCS lights in my house. You know what I mean? But when you think about it, what advice can you give the kids now that are going through the recruiting process where the money and the fame and everything is starting younger than it's ever been before?
Well, Carl, most guys that make it to the majors or make it to the big leagues or the NFL, the NBA, they'll tell you that money was always, they were driven by money, but that wasn't the sole reason why they executed the plan of becoming great. So at the end of the day, while you're sitting there running those sprints, shooting thousands of shots, going to the batting cages, everything that you have to do to become great, understand that your sole purpose is greater than that financial gain. Your sole purpose is for the world to remember your name. And the people that come behind you, you're setting the best example. So you want to show that work ethic is super important. My ability to go out there and, like you said, be a great teammate and be a great person, because I got inducted in my Hall of Fame and my high school Hall of Fame last year. Not one time did anybody come up to me that remembered me from my high school ever spoke about what I did on Friday nights. They spoke to my parents, my wife, and my son at that point. My oldest wasn't there, of the person I was and the teammate that I was at that time. And they shared so many stories. So I look back at it and I see that it's truly important for these young guys to get what they're worth. But someday that money's going to run out. But what you give to people, the joy, the understanding that they're a person, and the love that you give to them, and the advice that you give to them can go on forever. So that's the advice that I would shoot at them, Coach Carl.
Smoke, before we get out of here today, we got a couple of things that we must address.
Mm-hmm.
Smoke, in this portion of our show, we are assessing and giving out personal fouls. Basically, we are calling out anything we deemed as unsportsmanlike or that just don't sit right with us. This is where we give out our flags. Smoke, who are you giving a flag on the play to today?
I am throwing a heavy flag at parents that want success for their kids more than the kids want for themselves. And you just saw a great example of Sean and his son Peyton, of Sean just basically saying at the end of the day, he has to want it more than I do. Now, working in college as a coach, working in the front office as a general manager, and sitting through a lot of those meetings, every single time that a parent walked in and led the conversation all the way through and deemed that their son, my son got to get this, my son got to wake up in the morning, and they go all the way through of telling us what they want for their son. You never once heard the son say, this is what I want for myself. In order to raise a competitor, and I got 3 kids that are ultra competitive, I never taught them how to be competitive. The only thing I told them to is you want to win at all costs except for cheating. So when you are educating and you're putting that knowledge into your child to becoming successful, they have to want it for themselves. If you want it more than they do, you will always lose. It's not your job to start them off every single morning by saying, hey, we got to get up, we got to do push-ups, we got to go run, we got to do this. It might start off that way in terms of giving instructions and making sure that they follow through. But at some point, Coach Reed, you have to step back and they have to tell you that they want it. And when they tell you that they want it and you're driving them, it now becomes a driving force. But if you're driving that car, at some point, the gas is going to run out on you and there's no fuel in those young people. They got to be fueled by success for themselves. That's my flag. Who are you throwing it on today, Carl?
Smoke, I'm throwing my flag today on high school coaches and club coaches that are demanding that kids play one sport year round and they're not supporting multi-sport athletes. During my time as a high school coach, Smoke, I met with virtually every college football coach in the country, and they all wanted to know one thing. What other sport does this kid play? If you look at professional sports, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, all the best players are multi-sport athletes. You do not need to specialize. You do not need to focus on one sport year-round. Enjoy being a kid. Help your school and help your team win at multiple things. Summer baseball coaches should not be monopolizing every weekend and every day of your life preparing you for baseball. Football coaches should not be monopolizing your life. Basketball coaches should not be You have the opportunity to play multiple sports. Now, there's some training that you're going to need to do in your main sport to keep you sharp throughout the year with some trainers. But high school coaches, club coaches should not be preventing athletes at the high school level from playing more than one sport. Smoke, that's nasty business. I got to throw a flag on the play.
Coach, you should have threw 3 flags on that. Don't even let him come on the field for it. Because when I was evaluating guys, Carl, I wanted to know how many other sports did you play? And that was from high school to college, but also from college to the NFL. I wanted to know what kind of athlete you were. Because if you played baseball, there's a level of processing that you have to go through. Basketball, still a level of processing that you have to go through. And what you said to Peyton earlier in the interview, decision-making, when you play multiple sports, there's a fact of decision-making that comes into play. And you keep developing that, and you keep on processing all the way through it. So the more sports that you play, the better processor you become. I've never met a real good quarterback that if you gave them a ball in any sport, they couldn't execute it. They can shoot the lights out of it. They can hit a baseball. They can throw a strike. And when they get on that golf course, they can put it in the hole. So parents, like you just said, coaches, allow those kids to play year round. Don't be bullying them into playing just your sport because you're selfish. Become the unselfish guy. Carl, what you got up next?
Listen, we're going to hit in a couple of viewer questions. Now, I got some pushback from you, Smoke, here. All right. Gmail CGS says, Auburn didn't have bum teams. Auburn always recruited really well, Smoke. So let's not pretend like Cam carried a bunch of bums. Auburn, without Cam, was beating Saban every few years.
Carl, again, you always accuse me of moving the goalposts. I'm going to keep the goalposts right in front of me. I'm not talking about the fact of beating Nick Saban. I'm talking the fact of winning a national championship and destroying the SEC without anybody else on that offense that you and I can sit back and say, okay, he had a long career in the NFL, or he was an all-star, or even an all-SEC player on that team. It was Nick Fairley on defense, Cam on offense, and they carried him all the way to the rings and things and celebrated with that perfect smile and that crystal ball in the air.
We're going to go with one more question. We're going to take this one from our guy, Adam Stanko, who wants to know from you, what about Bo Jackson?
What about Bo? Bo's probably the greatest athlete in terms of being able to be a multi-sport player of our history. But again, Bo Jackson didn't have a landslide, just a historic run on the SEC like Cam Newton did. Modern day, Cam. If Adam wants to sit back and talk about what Bo Jackson did in the single wing with the bullhorn face mask, when you had guys in the three-point stance at the receiver position, that's a solid case. But you cannot make the case that Cam Newton didn't run through all pros, Hall of Famers, top 3 picks, Marcel Darius, Mark Berrien, Mark Ingram on the Alabama team, and just destroyed the SEC. It wasn't close. And again, it hurts my heart to talk about that other school. I don't even mention them. But Cam is that one. Period. Point blank.
Well, Smoke, we're going to wrap it up. I'm really excited about the guests we have coming in on Friday on our show this Friday. We're going to bring in University of Kentucky associate head coach Vince Morrow. Smoke, you and I both know that he's a legend on the recruiting trail. Also was a legendary high school coach. When you think about the consistency that Kentucky has had, you cannot think about it without Vince Morrow and the contribution he's made. We're excited to have him on Friday.
Coach, beast in the recruiting game, man. Legendary, man. Whew. Can't wait. Great information coming.
For Smoke Dixon, I am Carl Reed, and we have just went unfiltered.